time, and because that complexity came back to our time or appeared in our time, time itself had to adapt in order to be able to support that being in this matrix, if you will. I've talked about this in the past, and I can get into it some other point in detail about the complexity issue. But let me go on with some of the aspects of this. So anyway, we think in the first week of February, and I'm not going to say what day because we want to hold some of these things to ourselves, and I'm not going to talk about all of the elements in our set of 20 identifiers that we have discussed and think that we've actually discovered here. But let's discuss one of them in two different aspects, and that's wounds. So of the four of us, three of us happen to have wounds in the early part of February. In two cases out of the three, the temporal alteration, wrinkle, hiccup, whatever it was, caused the wounds to reverse the healing process in a weird way. So in the other case, it sort of speeded it up. So imagine a situation where I had a very large and painful burn on my palm, and it was healing along just fine, and it was nearly completely healed. And then on a particular day, it suddenly jumped back to a stage in the healing several days back. That is to say, suddenly became exactly as it was 3 days past, when there was a certain level of greater distension in the skin due to the blistering and so on. That is something you would notice if it's healing along and it's causing you less problem, and then all of a sudden it's instantly back to a state 3 days previously without you having done anything. You haven't re-injured it, nothing has changed, you're just sitting there and you actually watch this occur. That would be one kind of an indicator here. On the other hand, the other kind of an indicator would be a situation where one had a wound that had stitches, and because of the nature of the wound and the stitching and its relationship to the particular day that it occurred, you're actually able to sit there and watch the little tiny holes that the stitches had just been removed from disappear before your eyes, and the skin heal itself as though, and in fact, the wound had never appeared, never occurred. And so this was certain aspects of duality, and we can say that these two instances that I've given you represent a good construct of the 20 items that we've identified among the four of us as to why we think something happened. Now, this is akin to the Stradivarius argument that was put forth in Veterans Today by Gordon Duff, where the argument is that Stradivarius made these incredibly sounding violins, and then one day something happened, and no matter who made them or how you made them, using the exact same materials, same process, same wood, everything, they never sounded the same and haven't since. And we cannot replicate the sound of the Stradivarius, and that's what makes them so cool. And it has nothing to do with the process, has nothing to do with the wood, the moisture content, the cosmic rays at the time, the manufacturer, the guy who made them. None of those things are pertinent. What actually happened was that a certain level of complexity intruded, and the nature of wood and sound changed thereafter, and we lost a level of purity or whatever in the upgrade to the new complexity. And so that was the argument being made. I'm making the argument about the complexity part, but within the Veterans Today article, if you go and read it, the argument is made by some military guys that, here we have evidence that there was a temporal dislocation, abrasion, wrinkle, hiccup, upchuck, vomiting episode, something, however you want to characterize it, and thereafter, everything was different, and Stradivarius violins did not sound the same. Now, in my understanding of space-time, such a thing could be caused by a being of greater complexity than the temporal moment you're in, because you grow in complexity with each and every moment that you exist. Each and every moment itself grows in complexity. So a temporal being, or a being in a temporal level far ahead of ours with a greater complexity, uses a device or whatever means to insert themselves back at our level. In order for that level of complexity to exist back here, all of reality must change, spreading out from a nexus point of that complexity in order to accommodate the increased complexity without a temporal disruption of some significant size. Such as the being going kapoof, or, megatonnage of energy being released and all of that kind of thing. Because conceivably the universe could choose to react that way. Maybe the universe decides it doesn't want to support time travel, and so anytime you shove somebody or something back in or forward into time, kaboom, they turn into a giant explosion. And then it dawns on you, oh geez, we shoved a rabbit back in time, and maybe that's why there was that sudden, unexplained nuclear event in, 1956 or whatever. And thus we go and look at history books, and there was just, this nuclear event no one could make any sense of. Only now in the year 2013 we find out it was a bunch of guys in a time lab that just shoved a rabbit back in time, and the universe doesn't want to support rabbits going back in time to 1956, so it blows them up when they show up there. Anyway, so universe could choose to react that way. Instead, because of and actually I think if you postulated, by the way, just to dig the knife in and twist it a bit, if you postulated that Big Bang actually existed, you would almost have to postulate that universe would react that way in a Big Bang universe to temporal intrusions because of the nature of how time would be constructed in such a universe. And it would have to shed the energy and not allow it to intrude. Good thing we don't live in a Big Bang universe. In the little bloop universe, what happens is the being of greater complexity in and of themselves shoves all of their complexity back into time here and back into our space, and our space and time sort of opens up a bit to accommodate them. No big deal, no worries. But then because they're vibrating at a higher level of complexity than we are, all of reality has to catch up, so to speak, the very next time that vibration changes, which is every 22 trillion times a second. And so, from that point on, a ripple goes out through time-space from the nexus of that being, or whatever, showing up here. That wrinkle, that hiccup, that vomiting, or abrasion, or lancing, or knifing, or scraping, or whatever in time that occurred. If it was a being shoved back here, wherever that being lands, so to speak, that point it becomes a nexus in time and nexus in space, and ripples go out in the little blue universe we actually live in that increases the complexity of everything around them. And it changes things like sound, etc., and so on. And the postulate is, at this point, and it's just a postulate, we don't know, we have no real definitive proof. We've got our little set of 20, and we have some solid certainties in there that we can offer up. For certain reasons, we're keeping them closely held, just because we want to use them for validation later on, so we don't want to be broadcasting this out. But it's very interesting that we do believe, and all four of us came to the conclusion independently, it looks like something happened in time. Now, it took me about 4 or 5 days to figure out that was what my conclusion was. And that's pretty much the same with the other individuals also involved in this work. In addition to that, I've been contacted by some people that are in the psychic kind of line of work, and they're also of the opinion that something changed. And that's really how we're all phrasing, is something has occurred, something has changed. I in no way think this alters the global coastal event. I don't think this was a timeline shift. This is nothing at all like Dan Burish going to some hotel room in Vegas and making a big deal about shoving the whole damn timeline, all of us people, all this energy and stuff, into a different timeline where, I mean, the idea is absurd. The amount of energy involved is hugely fantastic. So, no, I don't think in any way that the global coastal event, the upcoming earthquakes, the solar expulsions, the volcanoes, I don't think any of that has been impacted. What we are wrestling with is the idea that maybe recently a time traveler has either just appeared or just left. I don't know how universe would react, whether they would do the complexity shift on the being showing up here, which is what I think. But there's a certain argument to be made that the greater effect would be felt when they left, and the universe attempted to calm down the greater level of complexity back to where it was previously, if you will. So if they were here for 18 days or so, the idea is that, maybe when they left on the 18th day, as universe calmed down to the previous level of complexity, and because it didn't have to support the higher level of complexity, that's when we would notice these kind of things. And I can buy certain aspects of that argument, but I'm undecided. So at the moment, I'm saying that either something arrived or something left in order to describe or rationalize the assumption or the suspicion or the conclusion that I've come to independently, and that my three buddies have as well. Also come to the conclusion that something has changed here. And as I say, these other people that are using psychic methods as opposed to something in the computer where we have some level of data to check. So what it is, I don't have a clue. I'm very interested. I'm quite fascinated. Maybe the military's out there monkeying around with time and they've done something, and we just happen to, because we're sensitive to it and working it continuously, and we have processes running all the time, that we were able to pick this up. In two of the four of us, they work for corporations, and the corporations are aware that something has occurred, at least up some part of the food chain in that corporation. Many of the guys apparently in the corporation up in the upper management, don't have a friggin' clue as to what's going on in terms of the technology and how it all works, or even how time sort of functions, even if you think of this in a Big Bang traditional sense of time. Now, as I say, as far as I can tell, there's been no major alteration in our data stream to suggest that any of the events that we forecast in this past month or so have in any way been altered. Since this occurred in the first week of February, we've had some time to sit and allow this thing to percolate, and in all four cases, we're all of the opinion that our processes are unaffected, even though there are residual traces within the data, fossils as we call them, that something had occurred. So in all four of our minds, insofar as we've been able to come to a group conclusion, there was a shift in the complexity, or a shift in time, a wrinkle, a vomit, as I say, some kind of a hiccup, and we caught it. Whether we caught it coming in or going out, we don't know. We don't know its duration. We don't know its impact. We don't know its effects. It is in no way related to any of the forecasts that I've got. It doesn't appear to be related to altering, or doesn't it not appear to have altered any of the forecasts that any of my my contemporaries here have made. We're all proceeding, and everything's still ticking over just fine. Our referential integrity checks are working on our end anyway, the way they always have. But as I say, we caught something, and it was just really interesting. Now, I don't know where it's going to lead. I've been very hesitant to even bring it up. Of the four of us, I'm the only one with any kind of a public forum. There are a couple of the psychic guys that also have public forum, and so they are able to get this word out and discuss it as well. It's really interesting. I mean, it's absolutely terribly fascinating. I haven't been able to really think of a lot else. It's been ticking over in my mind here since this occurred as to what could this possibly be. I have yet to get into the idea of meaning for it. So at this point, what I'm saying is that I have a context. We have a change in time that we think we can validate. And because it's four of us acting independently and arriving at the conclusion independently, and I happened to talk to this one guy, Rory, and Rory had talked to John, and John had talked to Fiona. And so it was just kind of weird. And then we all got together on a Skype call, and we all compared notes insofar as the proprietary nature of our work would allow. And basically, we've all come to the same conclusion that, geez, something occurred at a level so fundamental that if it was not directly affecting time, it appears to have affected our temporal sensing mechanisms spread among four different competing methodologies, all at the same instant, if you will, but at least we noticed it within the same day. And while it didn't alter our processes, it did indeed leave a fossil in all of our individual records. And so this was just really interesting as to what could this be. Now, Rory, he's a kid, and he thinks, oh geez, it's either another reappearance of the one of those ships in the Philadelphia experiment. I can't think of what it is, or something along those lines, or it's giant UFOs that are showing up here, and they're starting to, and just because they show up here was his suggestion, their level of complexity is in my terminology, is such that it causes our